Okay, in this problem, we're told their X pens can be purchased for $5. In many cases, students are going to mix up the correct numbers here and get the reciprocals of the answers. Look at the answer options on a quick vertical scan. You'll see those are possible options shown. How do we avoid that? Well, the first step is to focus on the unit prices. Calculate the unit prices. So if I spend $5 on X pens, suppose X equals 5 pens. That would be $5 for 5 pens, or $1 per pen. That expression is 5 divided by X. That's the appropriate unit price calculation. How about pencils? I can buy Y pencils for $8. Well, if that's 2 pencils, then I can buy for $8 Y equals 2 pencils. It would be 8 divided by Y equals 2, or $4 per pencil. So 8 over Y is the unit price per pencil. It is not the other way around. That's half the battle. Once you have the appropriate unit price, and take advantage of plugging in numbers to make sure you get it correct, then we need to calculate the price per pen times the number of pens plus the price per pencil times the number of pencils equals the total dollar cost, which is what they want the expression for. Well, that's price per pen's 5 over X. They give us 6 pens, so times 6, plus the price per pencil, 8 over Y, times the given amount of 7 pencils, equals, well, with a slightly rearrangement, option B. That is your correct answer. This problem requires you knowing your difference of two squares, but also just enough about rational expressions to be able to identify wholes and asymptotes. So let's take a look. F of x is x plus 3. G of x is x squared minus 9 over x minus 3. Well, we know x squared minus 9 is a difference of two squares. That factors into the conjugates of the things being squared, which is x plus 3 times x minus 3 in this case, all divided by x minus 3. And everything above and below horizontal fraction bars are basically in parentheses. This binomial is the same as this binomial. It cancels. So it looks like g of x equals exactly the same thing, x plus 3. But be careful. That's not quite true. What is x plus 3? Let's quick graph this out. And a slope of approximately 1. This is f of x equals x plus 3. Problem. Is it exactly g of x? The problem is g of x cannot exist. It's undefined at x equals 3. At that point, 3 minus 3 is 0 in the denominator, and the expression for g of x is undefined at x equals 3. Or another way to say that, x cannot be 3 as part of the domain. So what does that mean? At x equals 3, my graph for g of x has a dislocation. What is that? Is it an asymptote? Well, it would be an asymptote unless the numerator goes to 0 at the same time. So the numerator would go to 3 squared minus 9, which is 0. So it also approaches 0 at the same time, which means I actually have a hole at x equals 3. So the pink line is actually g of x, and the black line is f of x. So what does that mean? Well, that means they essentially are not exactly the same. They are the same except for x equals 3. But here's the tricky part students might miss. They still have infinitely many points in common. Just because they have one point that's not in common there at x equals 3, a whole line, remember, still has infinitely many points. So infinity minus 1 is still infinity. So the answer here is going to be 2 and 3. They're the same except for x equals 3, and they do have infinite points in common. Most students might jump at the idea that they're exactly the same, Roman numeral 1. That is absolutely not correct in this case. Y equals 30 minus 5x has a solution or a point on the line that is 6, 0. The question is asking, what is the meaning of 6, 0? Well, to understand that, we have to always figure out and identify what is the definition of the x variable, what is the definition of the y variable. That will help you avoid getting into trouble if you do that every time on these linear interpretation problems. So x is the number of weeks. Y It is not the beginning inventory, the beginning amount, what we're so often trained to think it is. It's defined as the amount left over after X weeks. So 60 is X comma Y, which means essentially this says after 6 weeks, the X value, there will be 0 amount of Bitcoin or whatever it is we're talking about left over, the Y value. So that's what this point means. At this X value, the Y value is true. So what answer indicates this? Option A. The account will be empty. It'll have 0 remaining after 6 weeks. That's the meaning of 6, 0.